Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. The first hour is generally media and virtual production. Just any questions that you have about those, we'll talk about them. I can't promise we'll answer them. We'll do the best we can. Second hour is usually something that we want to spend a little more time on. Today, we're talking about education. We don't stream that to YouTube, so if you're watching this, you're going to have to figure out how to get into Zoom to watch us talk about that. We like to speak a little more freely, so we turn it off at the top of the hour. So stay tuned for that. Later today, just as a reminder, we'll have the Belfast Method again, starting at noon, and the team will be doing another live broadcast from Belfast from Accidental Theater. Pretty excited about that, and that'll be happening at noon Pacific Standard Time. And if you are part of the email list, you will get that that announcement there. Anyway, we're going to jump out now. I have to go work on a production. so today we have a live production that I have to go manage the back end of. So I'm going to disappear, but Emily Russo is going to take the reins and run with it as she does on Saturdays. And so she's going to take control. And so I will see you all bright and early tomorrow morning, Sunday, for the Philosophical Sunday. All right. Thanks so much. Take it away, Emily.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We are going to get ready to jump into our questions. Just a reminder that you are producing our show, so vote on those questions, vote them up, vote them down, make sure that you're adding questions in. We may not get to all the questions today. If we don't get to your question, we'll hand it back to you at the end. Let's go ahead and get started with our first question.
First question up from Guy Cochran in Seattle. Zoom multi-spotlights, do they now go out to YouTube streams in webinar?
Ari.
So I was going to very enthusiastically say, yes, they do, but then I reread the question and I see that it says Zoom webinar. So yes, I have used it on Zoom meetings. Indeed, it does. I suppose it means that it works for webinar as well, but I have not seen it with my own eyes. But it works in Zoom meetings. Multi-spotlight does appear on YouTube.
Awesome. Good to know. Anyone else want to jump in on that question? Or we're going to Ken?
Yeah, I was just thinking that we can actually, as this is a webinar, we could test to see whether it does. So I'm going to spotlight two people and let's see.
Let's push buttons and break
if
things.
It does work. Yeah. So spotlight, and it's going to be the question asker. Add a spotlight. So I'm just going to then, so I'll keep YouTube spotlighted and you can go into the next question. Let's see whether, it's going to take a few seconds whether that comes onto YouTube, but I'm watching YouTube now.
Sure. Next question, Mitchell.
Douglas Carmichael asked, during the Belfast test, Richard created an accidental theater Zoom account. How do you create alternate Zoom accounts not tied to a specific person's name?
Jonas.
You just use whatever name you want as the name. So accidental as forename, and then Fida as the second name, and you can just use a new email address, or you can create a sub account in your current account.
Excellent. Great job. So we just learned that, yes, it does in fact work. John Preto held it up for us. And we are going to go with that question. Sorry, this is a little weird. All right. So next question, Mitchell.
Guy Cochran from Seattle. Cinegear is today. Any new announcements?
Do we have anyone that knows anything about Cinegear? I don't think we have anyone to answer that question, so we're going to have to come back to it. Oh, Sky?
Well, again, traditionally, it's a lot of the film. It was usually held in the back lot of one of the studios. You get to see a lot of really big, expensive hardware, and that's all. That's the history of what Cinegear that my experience has been. But
rhymes with vinegar.
More information than I knew. Thank you,
Jeffrey.
Yeah, I've been to Cinegear a couple times, and usually I'm on the press list, but I haven't seen anything. And that goes with almost every conference. I haven't seen anything for press lists and announcements, so I'm not exactly sure. I know that Adobe is going to be pushing some stuff out next week, but I don't think that's going to be related with Cinegear at all.
Excellent. All right, let's go to our next question.
Roberto Barrow of Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. Since office hours has moved from Zoom, I can't pin individual windows. Is there any way to pin someone, or am I at the mercy of the person cutting?
Does anyone know the answer to that one? Sky?
Well, I guess I'm a bit confused. If you're inside the Zoom meeting, I'm able to, in a Mac, Command Shift W, and that highlights the window that's talking, or the active window. Or if again, Command Shift W, it goes back over to gallery view for me. So if you're inside the Zoom meeting, you should have the control to be able to, as well as go ahead.
I think the confusion comes from us being in a webinar, because in a webinar, only people on the panel can pin. People in the audience are not allowed to pin. They just follow the host view. It might be confusing if you jump from after hours to office hours, because in after hours, we are in a meeting. There you can pin at your own mercy if the host didn't spotlight. In the webinar, you are at the mercy of the person cutting.
Thank you, Jonas. Jeffrey?
Yeah, Jonas stole my thunder. I'm good.
Oh, okay. Great. Next question.
David Paskin from Miami, Florida asks, after getting 720p from Zoom, I received an email explaining that Zoom video quality is dependent on my Zoom client being full screen. What's the correlation between the size of my Zoom window and the quality of the video I'm sending out?
Jonas.
It's more on the receiving side. If you want to watch other person in 720p, you have to be above a certain window size, because otherwise you wouldn't actually benefit from 720p. So Zoom doesn't give you 720p. For example, if you want 1080p in office hours, you need to be in full screen or have a 4K monitor and have it in a certain size. Otherwise, Zoom won't give you higher resolutions.
Sorry. Who was the next question, Mitchell? Sorry, I totally was pushing on the wrong button. Go ahead.
Apology not necessary. Douglas Carmichael, last March, Twitch reduced stream quality from full HD to just HD to address internet bandwidth load, as many other streaming providers did. Wouldn't that create a greater processing burden on the Twitch's end?
Jonas?
It really depends how you want to see it. Twitch already does transcodes in different resolutions. They probably also didn't just reduce the resolution, they probably reduced the bandwidth, which would even help more. That's the same thing that Netflix did, that YouTube did. But it didn't increase the processing burden, because it already does a 720p encode. In theory, it could have even lessened it, because they removed the 1080p encode that they had to do.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, many of us live streamers that actually stream to Twitch or any of these services usually will record at our end and then stream out at their end, because we found that it becomes so unpredictable from internet issues to resolution and stuff like that. So when I stream out, I'll record here at a full 1080p, and then I'll stream out at 720, and then most likely I'll do some post editing and then post it up a little bit later in the full 1080p. But streams, you should don't expect anything more than 720p at this moment.
Great. Next question.
Roberto Barrow of Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania asked, my church is renovating a large area of the building into 3 meeting areas. Each room can host a meeting independently and view the audio-video feed from our sanctuary. Any suggestions on a control unit, stream deck, Xtron, etc.?
John?
So normally in a situation like this, you'd run it into a router. So each one of the rooms, audio, video, run into the router, and then from the router, you can feed that into whatever you're controlling with, whether that's an extreme or maybe a constellation. So I think a router is your best bet. Blackmagic has some good ones.
Sky?
I'm encouraging my facility to that gather on Sunday mornings to also see what other uses those large rooms can be. During the week, there are students that possibly could use good Wi-Fi, good internet, good location to have a classroom, because they may not have that access in their apartment buildings and things like that. So we may talk about that in the education hour, but what alternate possibilities could that hardware be used for, not just on a specific day of the week?
Jonas?
So there are multiple options that you can do. You could probably use an atem mini on each of the desks. If you want to have a multifunction room, you might need to wait a little bit longer for the Burdock Play device. What the Burdock Play device enables you is you can pin specific people or specific views on a Zoom room. And the cool integration that Burdock did with Zoom rooms is a Zoom room has a controlling section where you can normally control stuff like window blinds or other things. But what you are able to do with the Burdock Play and a Zoom room controller, so it's just one tablet, you can remote control which NDI source is going to which screen. And that is really helpful if you want to manage that. And then you could just send them the video feed from the Sanctuary over the atem mini or something else.
Peter?
Well, I was just looking at this and saying, well, a note of caution. If you're not near the room, you're not going to hear the crosstalk from the rooms, because if they're doing like I've seen many places do and put up those movable partitions between the walls, you're going to get crosstalk between them. And I mean echoing. I don't mean electronic crosstalk. I mean literal audio crosstalk between the rooms, because you'll hear each other through those movable walls. So just note of caution there.
That's a good point. All right, next question.
Michael Mader from Brisbane, Australia. What apps are panelists using for LIDAR scanning on iOS?
John?
Here's the one that Alex recommended to us, Polycam. I downloaded this. I used it. I scanned a room yesterday that I'm doing an install in. It works great.
Great. Sky?
A year ago, when the 12 first came out, Alex recommended the 3D scanner app, and I also used it to go site that we're using this coming Saturday for Matt in the Kitchen. And so it was awesome because you can get the camera angles, and it did a single space very nicely. So
I have my 13 on the way. I'm very excited. Nigel?
oh, and I'm very jealous.
Yeah, I had a question for John Predo. When you said you scanned a room, how physically do you do that? Do you just wipe it around? Do you go around 5 times? What do you do?
Yeah, you walk around until you see the mesh. It creates the mesh in real time. You can see this guy that's scanning these examples online. So you walk around until the room is completely scanned in. You can see it on the phone.
Sky showing his scanned room on his phone as well. All right, next question.
Michael Mader from Brisbane, Australia. Again, does the panel have any suggestions for multi-source headphone switchers, especially the tie-in with 4-pin comms pack?
We don't have anyone in the queue, so unless someone wants to jump in real quick, I think we're going to have to pass on that question and move on to the next one.
Douglas Carmichael asked, would a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K be sufficient for a desktop camera, or would a 6K Pro be more future-proof?
Mark?
A lot of this depends on the budgets you have for your camera, because the Blackmagic 4K takes micro four thirds lenses, and the Blackmagic 6K Pro takes Canon EF lenses. And there's quite a difference in the price, and you may already have a stockpile of different lenses that are EF lenses or micro four thirds lenses. So you need to consider that before your purchase.
Nigel?
Okay, if we want to talk good enough, then good enough is a Brio. You know, a Logitech Brio is good enough as a really good camera, if good enough is what you want. If what you want is more than good enough and you want to get to the best you can get, then the advice on the lens and combination is really important, because there's a huge difference between the prices and the lenses. But if that's not the issue, go 6K. I went 4K and then had to come back and redo it as 6K. So it is it's a money because it's a lens thing. If it's not a money thing, go 6K. And if it's a money thing, Brio is good enough.
Peter?
Well, just to add to what Nigel just said, that was that was the hole I went down, was trying to figure out how much money I wanted to spend. And then because the lens camera combination is quite different. I mean, I have a 6K Pro, but in reality, to use a good enough analogy, also is the requirement to be able to control it from an atem mini. I mean, that's because otherwise the world is open to you as to what cameras you can put in play at that point. I know Jeff and I both use Sony AX series cameras at our desks as an example.
Yep. Ken?
Yeah, the main difference between the two is the obviously the lenses are very different, but with the 6K you can get a much shallower depth of field. So if the distance, if you're talking about this being on your desk, so it's going to be quite a short range from where the camera is to you, and then depending on what you've got in the background, and if you want that nice kind of soft background feel, then the 6K with a large f-stop lens would be able to give you that effect.
All right, next question.
Stuart F. in Melbourne, Australia. Is it irresponsible in turbulent times to buy 4 lenses and DSLR in the same week? What if it was 2 DSLRs?
Sky?
I give you my blessing to eat your biscuits. So to appease your guilt, maybe you need more biscuits. No, I think for you, because you actively exercise your equipment, you are testing, you are trying, it's your profession. I think there's not justification, but there's responsible active learning that's happening with you. So now, if you're going to share them, I don't know. So that's my thought in that category. Now, if you gold plate them, that might be a little irresponsible.
They're Tim Tams, Sky. Tim Tams. Nigel?
Yeah, I think the question of gold plating your phones is a good one, or your cameras. I saw that the Virtua or whatever it was of the phone that they used to sell in Vegas for like $50,000, which was just a flip phone. So I generally avoid those. I think the more interesting question is are you buying into a new standard? Would you go for 2 phone? If you went for 2 camera bodies, are they from the same manufacturer? Are they from different manufacturers? Why are you buying them, and what can you learn from it?
Oh, that's a really good point. All right, next question.
Rupert McRae from Dallas, Texas. Unity Intercom now offers encryption, and the Unity app now alerts you that your comms are unencrypted by default. Is this a problem or a solution?
And we got nobody coming up with any suggestions about that, which I want to know. So but let's put that question back in later this week and move on to our next question. Before we move on to the next question, just really quickly to let our producers know, we're running a little low on questions and not a lot of upvoting. So please, please, please use Mukana to vote up the questions. Your opinion matters. That's how we choose which way we're going in this show. All right, let's go with the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, if you were building an Office Hour 2.0 style workflow with Isadora or a similar tool, would channel level, pan, mute, scene change, and mix assignment be sufficient on the audio side, or would you want higher level MIDI control like EQ preamps?
And it looks like we don't have any Isadora guys here either. I know, we're whiffing today. A lot of whiffs. All right, next question.
Douglas Carmichael, why did TWiT choose the Telos Axia Element mixing console designed for radio use instead of a more general use console like the Yamaha CL QL series or Allen Heath SQ dLive?
And again, we swing and we miss.
I'll answer it.
All right, go for it, Mitchell.
The folks at Axia, who I know are very aggressively trying to seed their devices out there, and they kind of invented IP audio for radio. So I think it's probably just a matter of an offer of a reasonably priced console for their use. And if you're a radio person, you gravitate towards radio type devices. Jeffrey?
Jeffrey?
And twice. Okay. So you kind of answered, Douglas, you kind of answered your own question there, because Leo always thinks of this as a radio show first rather than video. Other than that, Yamaha having the Telos set, it's just what the people that are working there are really preferring for a mixing console. You don't want to throw them in front of a Allen and Heath if they're not familiar with how the board works, especially into a production thing like that. So part of it might have been the fact of what the staff would have preferred.
Peter.
I think Mitchell also hit on another key point. Leo still runs a radio show every Saturday and Sunday, and he is tied into a radio network. And I bet you there was some conversations that occurred between the network and his location.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's go on to our next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks again, how can I preserve the greatest possible audio fidelity through a low bitrate stream?
And again, that's I think we're striking out. Jeffrey?
The best way to do it is to create a side stream and then record that at the highest quality while your stream goes out at whatever quality that goes in, like we said before. The audio or video, put it at your highest quality outside, going to whatever recorder you're set up, and then stream at a different rate.
John?
I say get more bandwidth, Douglas. Get more bandwidth.
The answer to everything, more bandwidth. Next question.
Nigel Dassault from Austin, Texas. For those lucky people with iPhone 13s, anything you notice on first use?
Ken?
Yes, the cameras, the macro on the camera is amazing, and how close you can get and the way it zooms in. Yeah, that's kind of I haven't had much time to play around with it, but the cameras are impressive, and the cinema mode is pretty cool.
Nigel?
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to play with mine yesterday because we had family around, and as much as I wanted to go and play with my iPhone 13, I was told family came first for reasons I don't know. So I noticed two things, and I haven't really taken it out yet. Is I've noticed that the camera bumps are much bigger, or I've noticed a couple of things. I have the old wallet, and the black do not look alike. They look quite different. So I guess that's to get me to buy another find my thingy wallet. I have to tell you, the thing that's most surprising me at the moment is it's running quite hot. So I don't know whether that's because I'm doing the download from the cloud of the 1,572 apps I have running on my iPhone, but it actually feels to be running quite hot, which is surprising me, and maybe it will get better when I stop doing that. I guess one last thing, the bugbear for me of the annual cycle is AT&T, and I have two lines on the phone. I have my standard line, and I have a SIM line with a work phone. I think it's done both, but I haven't made a phone call, and I fear that there's an hour with AT&T in my life coming up.
Yeah, I only traded in because the offer was good enough to trade up, and I really want the LIDAR. Let's go to the next question.
The great Mix Effects Pro co-programmer Johnny Astelias from Manila says, I miss Matt in the kitchen. When is the next season, and will office hours assist in the production again?
Sky?
Well, I cannot. Matt in the Kitchen is now working with Kyle Hammond, and we're currently doing a new adventure called Hour of Happy on Friday evenings. But as we discovered, we are only able to allow currently people into the on-Zoom experience from within the United States. However, Zoom Events is a potential horizon with us, and we are partnering with many people. Well, actually, all of the tech crew are from the office hours for that experience. Now, with specific regards to Mad in the Kitchen, stay tuned. We are in conversation with organizations in Los Angeles because Madeline's an Emmy and Peabody Award winner. She's a talent. She's a force of nature. She's 30 years in the industry, starting and pioneering new and unique things. Stay tuned.
Ooh, can't wait. All right. Next question.
Tony Nobley from Noonan, Georgia. I need a solution for elderly member of House of Worship. She is getting the new iPad from the church. Is there a recommended mic with the iPad, or will the iPad be good enough sound? Looking for a low-tech solution.
Jeffrey.
I'll take a stab at this. The iPad, it's going to have a multi-screen, or not, I'm trying to think of the term. Anyway, the whole point is that the microphone, as long as she's in a quieter room, it'll work fine. Finding different microphones, there's several different options out there. I got one on my desk from IK Multimedia that works really well, but it really depends on if she can hold onto a microphone, if she wants to put it on her lapel or anything like that. But the many different options. If she does not, she or anybody else does not like how the microphone comes from the iPad.
Yeah, good point. Tony?
So actually, it's two individuals. One is 92 and the other one is in her late 80s. And they are participating in a Zoom virtual service. And the problem is that the sound is inconsistent because they're in a room and they're speaking to a laptop in one case. And in the other case, it's actually a landline. And so it's very problematic. And so I had asked this question about a solution for them in the past, and the consensus was to get the iPad. And I just want to know if, I know that the iPad is going to be better than what they're both using right now, but I just wanted to see if there was a microphone that would be needed to improve that. And then I also need you guys to remember that one is 92 and one, I believe, is 89. And so, but we want them to be able to participate, but it's problematic in the current setup.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, Tony, there's still a lot of factors that we don't know on this, and the biggest one is, will any of these two ladies want to wear a microphone? Because if they don't want to wear a microphone, if they don't want to put on a lapel mic or anything like that, your best bet is to get something more on a table mic that gets as close to the mouth as possible, and that's the key right there. If the iPad's way away, that microphone is going to be worth nothing to getting the proper sound. So having microphone that's close by, whether it be set on a table, if they're going to be in a very positioned area to do that microphone being in a good area towards the mouth is your key right there. Other than that, if they're not willing to wear or use a microphone, then you just have to do what you have, what you got.
Nigel?
So, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that in one case, the person will have the iPad directly in front of them. It will be their iPad. And if they need any assistance, they will get the assistance. In the other case, the person is going to be alone, but they will have the iPad. And that's why I need it to be as simple as possible and low tech as possible. The idea is to push a button on Zoom and for them to be able to come into the worship service.
Nigel?
Yeah, I don't have a mic answer, but I wanted to give another thought here because my elderly parents use an iPad and they don't know where the camera is. So if they're using an iPad for the first time, you may want to show them or mark them or put a little arrow with a mark on so they know where the camera is. Because on an iPad, it's obvious to us. It isn't obvious to older people where to look.
Yeah, that's a good point. I put one of those ring binder circle reinforcement tabs over it for my parents. So, sorry, Peter.
Well, Nigel, and you just stole what I said, because I had to do the same thing with my mother. I mean, handed her the big iPad and where am I looking? And the other thing is had to kind of get her a stand to put in front of her on her table to hold it, because she said, "Oh, it's a flat piece of glass," and she would lay it down on the table and then talk over it, but it also was not the most complimentary view of my mother's face, and kind of scared the grandkids. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, Gorilla Pods are really good for that because they bend and you can wrap them around different things, or just a regular tripod would be good to help them with that, especially the older people because of I have hand tremors, so holding a device for any amount of time it can, give you that wavy camera too. So, and I was trying to remember, there was a microphone that we used with the students, and I want to say Rode made it, and it just plugged into the audio jack, I don't remember if it was the audio jack but anyway, it increased the quality, but it was a lapel, so they had to wear it on them, but it had a nice long...
I think it's i2go makes a lightning connected mic as well, but
yeah, maybe that was it.
But if it's right in front of, and I think, Tony, what you're saying, in both cases, it'll be right in front of them, right? Yeah, the mic is good enough, but just make sure the angle of incidence of the glass is not such that you're looking up their nose. It sounds terrible, but we've all said our elderly parents didn't know where the camera was, so they'll think about things like that.
There's one more thing I will say, and that is do a little bit of treatment to the room if you can. Have them get a canvas photo behind them or something like that, so it'll help with the room control if you do have to use the iPad microphone.
All right, next question.
The man who's rocking a checkered shirt today, Tony Mobley of Noonan, Georgia, says, "Is there a learning curve for the new features of iOS 15?
John.
Tony, it's a good question. There's no real learning curve. There's additive features. The live text is amazing. I can often take pictures of like my VIN number for the DMV or serial numbers, and then it will convert that into live text, which is amazing. But there's no learning curve. You load the OS and it looks exactly like 14.
Jeffrey?
Widgets and all that, being able to add more than just the program icon onto the screens, and I think there's a little learning curve on that, because that can get a little confusing as to where you're positioning those widgets. If you're not in the right spot, it'll look like it'll be bouncing back and forth between two different areas, so you just have to be very cautious on how you move it around.
Nigel?
I think there are a couple of things to be aware of. I think one of them is the URL bar has gone to the bottom of the Safari page, which you can go into settings and move back up again. But if you're willing to give it a try, it's actually quite good because it's right by my thumb. So that works really well for me. The first implementation was terrible. This implementation isn't actually bad. And I think if you're willing to give it a try, you'll like it. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff around private relay, around VPNs and stuff. I think that takes some getting used to know there's a lot more security stuff in this. And Do Not Disturb has become multi-headed, and setting those all up and is quite difficult. And it's not difficult, but it's different. And again, just go back to my fabulous parents, one who's 95, one who's 85. Every iOS change, something changes that completely throws them. So think of your elderly relatives, and when they upgrade, because Apple all but makes it look like it's something you have to do, which you have to do at some point. You may need to think about what this does to them and throws their usages off.
Yeah, and I was going to say that the gathering the tabs in Safari and being able to swipe between open tabs is a little nice, but it's something you have to get used to. My husband did it this morning and was like, "It moved, look at this." And he was all excited about it, but it was like, yeah, if you did the tips thing, it showed you. Sky, did you want to add something?
Well, not add, I guess as an iPhone 12 owner, and just updated from whatever the 14.7 was to the 14.8 to get around the security issues last week. Should I wait? Should I jump to 15? I guess that you kind of answered some of that ambiguity.
I enjoyed the upgrade, but I'm a pro tech user, so I think
I've
there's
always
a
been on the
difference
bleeding edge
between.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're into like being the early adopter, I think it's an easy decision to switch up and go forward. But I think if you're like, things throw you off and, it gets really complicated, you don't want to do it in the middle of your workday and then be like, where did my URL bar go? And why is this not working the way I thought it was going to work? That would be my suggestion. Do it on the weekend when you have some downtime to play with all those features or go through the tips. Peter?
Yeah, I was going to follow on to Nigel's comment. The one that threw me was they, I'll use the phrase mangled do not disturb, because they took half a dozen different prior, like driving mode. What used to be automobile driving mode is now hidden inside do not disturb. The, sleep at night is now hidden inside do not disturb. So those are the types of things you have to find those things and set them up, because how you did it before doesn't work that way anymore. It's called refinement of the UI. That's the official term, right?
I do have to say that adding the multiple do not disturbs was one of my favorite parts of the upgrade, because I was able to set up my work one and the focus so I could let Slack come through, because I use Slack, and I could let, messages from my parents come through and pick and choose and customize, but it is fiddly. So I think, you definitely have to have that downtime to play with it and know what you want it to do. But I was really excited for those kind of new features on 15. So I upgraded all my devices. All right, let's move on to the next question.
Tony Mobley is back from Noonan, Georgia. What are the impressions of the new iPhone 13 users? Users. Yes, users.
Sorry. Users, yeah.
Yeah,
10.
I think we covered most of the points earlier, but the one part that I do like, it's not particularly for the iPhone 13, it is the new wallets. Having that Find My feature is useful. I've often taken off the wallet to charge the phone, and where did I last take it off? So the Find My on that is quite nice.
Cool. John Preto.
Ken, do you have Filmic or NDI capture on there that you can show us the macro?
I do. Yeah, give me a second, because while I'm cutting, because I'm doing the next question. But yeah, I'll show you the macro, but not this second.
All right, we'll come back to it, and we'll go to the next question.
Nigel Dessau of Austin, Texas asks, what is the top technical thing you have learned while on office hours?
John.
I use notes, and every day I write something down that I learn about a product or a service into this big notes list that I have. My favorite tip that I've learned on office hours comes from Alex 4D, and I was frustrated with all the Apple apps that took away Save As. And then he taught me if you hold Alt down, the Save As comes back. That was the number one thing that I learned.
It's the little things. Ari.
Rather than singling out a particular technology, because there are oh so many, and I could probably do an entire second half hour on that, I would say that moving from being a hardware in hand on-premise operator to producing in a distributed workflow, both technology and people and process is the most significant things, or one of the most significant things.
Nigel.
So 2-3 thoughts. First of all, Alex taught me color grading by taking control of my camera. That was an interesting while. Mickey helped me with my Mix Pre 3. That was interesting. But I think the best, if people haven't done it, is after hours. Yesterday, there must have been a 3 or 4 hour conversation, a 3-hour conversation about the Flow 8 or whatever it is. I don't know how much Behringer paid those people, but that technical support line at Behringer probably wasn't ringing, because Carl and a bunch of other people were doing it for them, and it was an astonishing experience to be able to enjoy.
It was amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say that my biggest takeaway from office hours, besides just having a community and being able to use Discord to ask questions and find information, because I wasn't a Discord user before, would probably be Keynote, because I had avoided it because most school districts didn't use it. But now I use it for all my presentations. So that was definitely my gain from Alex in office hours. Ken?
Yeah, I was trying to think of one that it's literally that you learn something new every day. If you come to after hours, there's always something new to learn. It's the best masterclass that there is, and the cost to entry is, well, really cheap.
Yes, it is. Tony?
I was going to say using Keynote was a big deal for me, but there are so many different things that I've learned, and I'm so far removed from the person I am or was when I first started participating in office hours. And I guess the last thing I'll say is that a regular guy in a small Georgia town can actually have conversations with people all over the world. I think that that is an amazing thing.
Jeffrey?
You know, it's interesting, as I've used Zoom way before this pandemic came out, and of course bringing them into in situations remotely was one of those things between Skype and Zoom at the time. So what I learned, you know, once again, lots of stuff I've learned with office hours, but one of the biggest ones was how to really work on my work on the presentation, on the looks and the feels inside this little bounding box here, and give the people their best shot at looking and sounding their best when they're on my show or somebody else's show.
Sky?
Well, it's a team thing, because without each other, a lot of the technical experiences that I'm getting would not have happened. And the access, specifically yesterday, Tony or Nigel, to your one question, I'm used to working in a 35-foot production truck that's millions of dollars of expense, with engineers that knew how to wire it, with technicians that knew that specific job that was right in front of them and how to use it. And Mitchell, you're shaking your head. You've been in those master controls and the hardware and the wiring and the cable and the copper. Yesterday, I was given VPN to Jim in Detroit, his switcher, $30,000 piece of equipment, which is then controlling the cameras in Belfast, Ireland. And I'm on a piece of software in Seattle, Washington, driving the piece of equipment in Detroit that's changing the cameras in Belfast. And Emily, to your point, it's not very expensive. Well, time, and then the value that people are bringing. So Nigel, that's not technical, but the opportunity of participating, they didn't let me in that 35-foot production truck very often, but that I had the opportunity today yesterday is yeah, that's my thing today. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow?
Mitchell?
To Sky's point, what used to cost millions of dollars, needed thousands of square feet and hundreds of people to run, could be done by one or two people. So the sea change is what you're seeing right here every day in every way. And maybe the greatest technical tip that I get from this group is the one I haven't heard yet, but every day I learn something, and that's the important point.
Mark?
Well, there's plenty of non-technical things, the friendship that's growing out of everybody here, the ability to ask questions and everything. But there are two technical components that I refer to every day during sound check, and that is I'm on a Heil PR40 into a Mix Pre 3. So I guess those two are the top two technical things I've learned about.
I've also learned that being part of this crew is very expensive, and the upgrades, but it's totally worth it in the end. All right, next question.
Mike Emmett from Melbourne, Australia. I'm looking for something like here to record graphics that I can use with the atem Extreme, but as more complex use cases. Suggestions for complex lower thirds and on-screen graphics.
Ken?
Yeah, we actually were demoing it in after hours, just before the show. It's called SPXGC, and that looks really interesting. It's actually a free open source program that you can use to create lower thirds. I also use the really complex stuff. Again, going back to Keynote, and I run and I can create stuff through Keynote. And while I'm here, I'll just quickly show you the to answer the earlier question on the how close you can get with the macro on the new iPro 13. They say 2 centimeters. It's more like 2 millimeters. You can get to stuff with on here. It's
great for reading menus in a dark restaurant.
Yeah, massively impressive how close you can get and zoom in. So that's my input.
Wow, very cool. All right, John.
So I use After Effects. So all of my graphics, like this spinning globe over here, is done in After Effects, and then I use a hyperdeck to feed that into the Extreme. But all of my complex stuff is all done in After Effects, and then fed in via either I'm going to use OBS or vMix or Mimo, and then load those graphics in to create amazing super sources like this one here.
Cool. Peter.
Actually, John will just, I mean, for me, this is a volunteer hobby kind of situation, but I use, I'm trying to motion instead of After Effects and feed those. And I use Playout B hooked into my atem Extreme for, I build them ahead of time and use them during the event, and then I also have Mimo Live to do some dynamic stuff on the side when I need it to. That's the path I ended up taking. But then I'm a 100% Mac shop here, or in my study, I should say.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, many of the software switchers will have a limited amount of graphics options, which is great, and you'll be able to use them. OBS, of course, being the free one. There's also, if you're on the Mac side, CamTwist, which has been around forever. And it really doesn't stream out or anything like that, but it can create graphics. We used to do the whole multi-layer graphics on the screen many, many years ago. But and I'm doing this for the Belfast method this afternoon. We're going to try to give this a try. This is actually New Blue FX, and it's got more of a production-looking feel to it. I can bring up the graphics. I can actually change, like for instance, I can bring in the lower thirds of the band members. I can change that out via spreadsheets and texts and things like that. I have that all at the ready. It's going to cost a little bit more for that, but it's a nice little program. I've been using that for years as well.
All right, and Peter, was that an accidental add in there on the? You have your hand raised twice. I didn't know if you had another. Okay, we're good to go. All right, next question. Before we do the next question, that will be our last question for the first hour. I want to ask the educators to start raising their hands to get ready for mic checks and come on in to the session. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Charlie Nancaro of Melbourne, Australia asked, I have a few beehives that I would like to have a live stream embedded in a web page. What would be the best outdoor webcam to do this? Power over Ethernet would be nice too, but not essential.
I would totally watch that. John?
So Charlie, I'm a huge proponent of the Axis cameras. This is Rocket Cam we'll be building here today. This is a all-in-one web camera. But the nice thing about the Axis cameras is onboard storage, and you have full accessibility to the stream. So this is the web server built in, but you can easily grab this and embed it in a web page. You have full control over the video, unlike what you can do with the Nest cams or any of those, which are encrypted. You don't have access to. So, access.com is the solution.
Ken?
Yeah, a cheaper option. You could use an old iPhone especially one of the ones which are weather sealed, and that would be a very quick and relatively cheap way of being able to have an outdoor webcam.
And Jeffrey.
Any camera that has an RTSP option to it is great, and Wise cameras are the perfect example for that. You have to sideload extra firmware into the camera, but then, and of course you have to turn off the encryption, but then you can take that RTSP and you can bring it into, I can bring it into OBS, Wirecast, vMix, Ecamm, all those easily, because it just shows up as an IP address, and you have to put in a couple credentials to do so. So it's not totally like an NDI per se, but you can bring it in and record it from there. And then you could actually make a box that'll record all of your cameras if you don't want to use the memory card on board or a cloud service.
Great. And that brings us to the end of the first hour. It was scary for a little bit. I thought we weren't going to make it with the questions, but we did a great job. So nice help with that. There was a question for education that was in there that disappeared. It was from Reading, UK. If you're still here and want to put that back in, I don't know what happened to that one. But right now I pass back all the questions that were in the first hour session. So I want to welcome our educators in. If you are in the audience and you'd like to join us and participate in the education hour, please raise your hand, come in. We'll be doing mic check.